Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another vidya. We got a video here from Bellular News. Be- Bellular. Bellular News. I think I got it. All right. So, trouble in the modding scene.
Look, I don't want to shock you too much, but today we're talking about corporate greed. What's fun though is it's not the usual kind of corporate
Ah,
greed, it is all about modding and how modding is becoming big business. And of
oof,
course, like all good stories, it's got a bit of a
W
villain, and
mods.
that villain is Wizards of the Coast. They
Oof, oof. Yeah, they've been having a bit of an oopsie here for a little while. Yeah, I was trying to think of a way to like play devil's advocate, and they are doing some good things. Don't get me wrong. Wizards has always found a way to do some pretty cool things, but we're at a point to where they're kind of stepping on the toes of the people that put them in the place that they're in. So it's kind of like y'all don't have to do this.
They've done an amazing job of ingratiating themselves to people, even though they've had so many wins, like with Baldur's Gate. Though, obviously, that being really good
Now, I was gonna say, I think he's about to say it, but that's all on Larian Studios. I mean, they fucking killed it with that game.
is kind of Larian's fault, so good on them. And they're involved in this story because we've also
Yeah.
got words of wisdom from the boss of Larian's Ven.
I've also modded the holy shit out of that game too. Larian, Jesus Christ. Baldur's Gate 3 modded the holy shit out of it. And now in 2025, we have the Oblivion remaster. I'm fucking sorry. Hello? Hello? What?
On mod
That's what I'm doing this weekend, by the way. Just playing straight up, just playing the new Oblivion remake
and fan games, and the quote from him is,
or
"They
remaster.
shouldn't be treated like commercial ventures that infringe on your property." Of course, a
True.
lot of people, including the people he had ended up partnering with to get Baldur's Gate, don't necessarily agree because they think it is all about their property that they're fine with, you modding as long as it's on their terms. And this is where today's story about modding actually does change. We're seeing a centralization, a standardization of what modding looks like, and that could, and I believe will, have implications for the future. Now, look,
Yeah. I don't want any sort of standardization of modding, like none. Like if you want to build a platform, like for instance, like Bethesda did with the Creation Club, where you reward people who would actually make nothing and give them something for their effort because they are doing such a good job. I think that's fantastic. But putting the I don't know, what's the it feels wrong for a free to make aspect of a game to be caged in under these. I mean, obviously, it still needs regulation to a degree because I mean, there's only so much freedom you can have when it comes to modding and all that sort of thing. So, uh, while I do agree with some regulation, I don't agree with overstepping your bounds and then telling people what to do. Obviously, it's their IP. If they want to fucking if they tell you that you can't put a certain outfit on a Starian, for example, uh, then you don't have a choice but to listen to them because it's their IP. They make the rules, right? But obviously it should be like the gentleman's agreement to leave the modders to do their thing, and it's also what would make your game popular beyond its years. Because obviously Baldur's Gate 3 was very popular, but it's gonna die if it doesn't have a way to keep itself alive. And then people are gonna wonder, where's Baldur's Gate 4? Well, say you don't go back to Larian for Baldur's Gate 4. See what happens when the next person you go to flops and they don't do their job and the game fucking is dog shit. People are still gonna want to play 3. But at that point, Baldur's Gate 3 is gonna be dated. So if you don't have mods to keep that game alive and continue to kind of grow its audience even beyond its typical runtime, if you will, like for example, the best example, Skyrim, and now the newest example, which is Oblivion, which that's not even like because we still have Sky Oblivion that's on everybody's radar, but we are now seeing a very interesting time where updating games that people enjoyed in the past are doing better than games that come out today, which is kind of sad. And it is a trend that is mostly a problem in America only because I've seen in Europe and stuff, they're still killing it, making great games. We in America have had like a couple of okay games and then like two like really good ones. No, three, maybe three good ones. But everything else has been utter garbage. Utter garbage. So if you're an American, shout out to you, my friend. I am sorry that the gaming industry has turned its back on us. Whereas everywhere else, especially even China lately, has been absolutely killing it with these games. And so is Japan. Japan is always delivered when it comes to high quality games, and then they continue to do so. Nothing really changes on that front.
Look, let's just be real for a second. You're a gamer, I'm a gamer, and that means we're
True.
often really bad at sleep. Thing is, though, not anymore. So, come to the front of the class, it is time for a lesson. I went from awful sleep to fantastic sleep, and today's sponsor, Manta Sleep, have been a huge help in my journey. And what Manta track. Manta's awesome, and you get 10% off using my
Yeah,
link and
10%
code
off.
Bellular News. Let's get a lay of the land. So, barring Nintendo, everyone
I'm
is
never
now
going to
pushing for
pronounce that
PC
name right.
launches as a major part of their business strategy. You cannot afford to not be on PC when the cost of making games is this high. And if you want an amazing example of that being so true that they were even willing to kind of put out PC when it shouldn't have went out, just look at the Monster Hunter story
True.
and the specific financial pressures involved in that being there on PC. Now, of course, with PC ports comes mods, and then add to that the big investor push over the last few years for user generated.
Yeah. Majority of games that I know uh, are fairly like not to say mod friendly, right? Like they don't have a mod manager and all this extra shit, right? Not it's not like a cyberpunk situation, but majority of games that I have seen that have mods for them were never games that were given the green light from the developer themselves, but it's kind of the unspoken rule to kind of just let people have their fun, right? Because like we're not at a point anymore where we have physical copies of games readily available. At least in my area. In my area, when I go to Walmart and shit, when I go to Best Buy, when I go to Target or wherever it may be, there's no games, none, no physical copies of the latest and greatest shit, or even enough copies of the older stuff because people just they don't really get they don't really get games anymore physically anyway. Some people do. Some people are collectors, but I personally I've gotten everything digital for I don't know how long now just because for sheer convenience because you used to need the disc in order to get the data to download it to then play the game. Well, now you don't need that anymore. We're at a point to where they can just send it to you digitally and then you simply just download it. Now, all of that has like its pros and cons, but one thing that is important is the fact that you now have that data locally stored in your PC. If you're a PC guy, obviously, if you're a console person, this doesn't really pertain to you as much. And I mean, even modding in general just doesn't really pertain to you that much either because you guys are very limited, especially if you're a PlayStation user. Uh, sorry, my friend. If you're an Xbox user, you're doing a little bit better. But obviously, the goat will always be PC when it comes to modding. Uh, aside from all of that, I think the unspoken rule is that even when games don't give you the green light, they kind of turn a blind eye, if you will, because it is like that one little bit of you being able to get a little bit more out of the game, especially now when the games are going to be going up in price to about 80, $90. That's crazy. That's insane. Like that's I don't know. I it's like that unspoken rule that should always be followed. And if Wizards is trying to break said unspoken rule, it only leads to bad things for them in the future. It just doesn't, I don't know, it doesn't make sense.
Rated content. Because look, why hire as many pesky game developers when you can have your users make the content and basically you just own the platform and become rich by skimming off the top? It's a pretty good business model, gotta be real. Anyway, the idea that players can consistently make new playable content to keep other people around all while everybody goes and buys skins is just perfect. And when these two things dovetail, modding becomes big, big business. And we have a very relevant case study today that, well, we can cherry pick as proof. And this is where we go back to Larian. Back in November, Larian's publishing director highlighted that their daily peak concurrent users were up 3% and that their daily active users were up by 20%, which is insane. Look how long ago that game came out. I mean, it's pretty new, but you get my point. And when he shared those numbers, he said, quote, mods are good. Yes, mods really did help Baldur's Gate 3. Its built-in mod system honestly is amazing. It is the dream for most companies.
It's okay. Its built-in mod system is okay. As somebody who has spent a lot of time modding different games, it would be nice if these games came with mod systems. Then you can get a little bit more for your fucking money. But that's just not really the case for a majority of these games. So a lot of them you need third party files in order to be able to mod things. And in the case of Elden Ring, you need to have mods and external files that one disable the anti cheat and two disable your online connectivity so then you don't accidentally connect online because then you'll be detected and then your account gets banned and it's a whole thing. So as much as I would as far as overall mods go, I think my favorite will always be Skyrim, obviously, because that one has had the most love as far as like integration goes. Second is probably BG3. I think is number two. Number three is probably Cyberpunk. Cyberpunk's super easy to mod, super fun to mod. It's so nice. Once you have the third party file, it basically just does everything for you. You don't have to do anything. Just download what you want. Um, I've had a pretty good time with that. I don't even know. Hold on a minute. Let's see. I'm gonna do a little research here. I Let me look up. I'm gonna see what else I have modded right now. I don't think I have that much modded at the moment. I used to have Elden Ring modded, but that's not a thing for me right now. I don't even think I have Elden Ring downloaded. Yeah, see, BG3 is the last game that I played modded. Let's see, games. Yeah, so these are the only games that I have modded, and I haven't started with TCG Card Shop yet, but that's probably what I'll do. Skyrim, obviously, Cyberpunk, and then Baldur's Gate 3. I had a lot more on Baldur's Gate, but then I had to delete a bunch of them because Larian is like, "Hey, we're going to give you another patch, and it's just going to be a fuck ton of shit that you've already downloaded for your." So that was a bit annoying, but that's all right. That's all right. So this will eventually go back up, but for now it's kind of muted. And I didn't really do too much to Cyberpunk. yet. I did do a fair bit, but I haven't really explored what all Cyberpunk has to offer. And old Skyrim still sitting at 304 solid mods. But I probably won't be getting back on Skyrim for a while, not until after I get, you know, unobsessed with Oblivion.
And here's why. It's internally moderated, it's cross platform, meaning that console players can use it, and it
True.
clearly works for both the company and users. That's really good, but it's entirely internal. The culture around modding, though, is a little bit different. It's a lot harder for business stakeholders to navigate the culture of modding. And, well, we found that out because of Larian's partner, Wizards of the Coast. They're not happy. What you're about to see is an absolute abhorrent travesty. It is war against the bottom line. It's Baldur's Village. It's quite lovely. It's a mod that adds the cast of Baldur's Gate 3 to Stardew Valley, and it's impressive. It adds new quest lines,
Wait, so people are taking characters from Baldur's and they're putting them in different games?
romances, loads of things. People can fulfill their happily ever afters for
You know, I was ready to go to war, but bruh, you can't go stealing people's shit and then just putting it on other fucking platforms. That's not how it works. That's theft. Like you're not exercising your creative freedoms. You're simply stealing somebody's property and claiming it on something else entirely. Like that's no different than people were taking Pokemon models and they were putting them in Pal World. Like you can't do that. Like this is what I said when there needs to be regulations because there's no reason that you should be able to take specific attributes or not attributes, but specific like if it's a what's the best way to say this? Um for example, there's a mod for Skyrim that is essentially it's a combat mod that makes the combat play like Assassin's Creed Valhalla. So that is just a combat system. That's not really anything crazy. It's not really anything that should be, pursued by any means, right? There's no monetary image behind said combat system because anybody who's like fucking 12 can come up with a combat system like that. However, um when it comes to characters, faces of franchises, that sort of thing, things that have monetary value that can be traced. So that it's no different than frickin' let's say somebody took Pikachu and they put it in Pal World. Well, that's not Pal World's fault. It should be regulated, obviously, but uh, it's not Pocket Pair or Pal World's fault if a modder decides to take that model and ignore the IP rights of Nintendo and then put it in Pal World. Now, obviously, this comes down to like where did they get the mod? Is it a third party thing? Obviously, because there are websites that should regulate, like Nexus, for example. Obviously, the regulation should be minimal, right? I did see a thing. What was a few weeks back? I saw a thing where Nexus was deleting any mod that had a Trump flag, but they were allowing mods that had trans rainbow flags. And that is where I essentially just say Nexus is overstepping. There's no reason to regulate it that way. That is just literally muting somebody's creative expression. If they want to fucking run around Night City with a bunch of Trump flags coming off of every fucking truck, then that's their own purview. This is the same way with the trans flags. If they want to be running around with a bunch of trans flags, sure, whatever, fine. Who cares? So you can't pick and choose. Like, if you're gonna be a free expression platform, you cannot pick and choose. You can't pick and choose sides. Like, you're the fence sitter. Like, you are the not involved fence sitter. Okay, you simply watch, you observe, you allow the community to grow in whatever way it wants to grow. Like, you gotta be the cultivator, essentially. You need to be the cultivator, not the regulator, sort of deal. Uh, didn't mean to rhyme there. But yeah, you can't steal characters that are obviously tied to an IP that have a trackable monetization behind them. Like, come on now.
For all of those characters that they love. Well, until a DMCA warning and Nexus mods noted that the mod was suspended and under review. Now, this
What did I say? W Nexus. Listen, as much as I think like sometimes Nexus does tend to overstep, they also do a very good job at regulating these things. And this is exactly where I think the fault lies when it comes to these types of things getting through, right? Because obviously, Nexus has to have people looking over the platform, making sure that people aren't taking Pokemon and then they're putting them in different games and stuff like that because it's not where they're supposed to belong. Um, the whole point of modding is for creative expression um, to really flourish. But that creative expression can't come at the infringement of other people's rights. And that's just not that's just not how the world works. I mean, it's the same way with all the freedoms we are granted here, at least in America. All of those freedoms come at a cost. They come at a price, and the price is that you don't infringe on other people's rights. All right? So you can have the freedom of speech all you want as long as your speech doesn't take away somebody else's rights to have that same exact freedom, if that makes sense.
This was because of Wizards of the Coast. They issued that DMCA takedown, and because
I
Wizards of the
agree.
Coast
Smart.
is not a very well regarded company, which is honestly impressive to me, well, the DMCA generated quite a bit of attention.
No, people, I think there's a little bit of salt in the wound because a lot of these IP battles, nobody really wins. A lot of people, they tend to, it's always been a popular thing to want to hate the corporation too. So, I mean, I'm not surprised at this at all. Uh, I myself, I'm a Wizards guy. I like Wizards of the Coast. I do think they have made a fair few mistakes, but I also think they try to learn from said mistakes. Whether or not they take the advice the audience gives them in feedback, uh, that's up in the air, depending on whether they take it or don't. But uh, you want to know some fucking proof? I have proof right here. If I can get it out of this fucking thing. I literally just went to a card shop the other day and because your boy plays Magic, I'm a Magic the Gathering guy. Let me know if you guys want to see a box opening. Stoneforge Mystic. I just got it for one of my decks. So yeah, your boy does like wizards.
Especially because the mod is free, even if the devs do have a Patreon, and no business unfriendly content is present, such as, squidgely bits and fluids and so on and so forth, like they like to put on the Nexus mods. None of that's there, so this really is good old innocent happy modding for the gamers. And that meant that to the community there was seemingly little reason to justify DMCA here, especially because under 20,000 people downloaded it, so it's not like it had a massive negative.
The numbers don't matter. It's the fact that you stole the fucking IP. Like Wizards is smart. Like they're taking a hands-off approach with Larian because they get they get a little bit of kickback from Larian being successful even post-launch. But if it goes over to Stardew Valley, then they don't get anything from that. That's Stardew Valley. That's a whole different fucking thing. So if they choose to say, "Hey, no, we want our characters to be represented in modding in our games," sure, Yes. That's all you can say. Mm. It's no different than Nintendo with Pokemon. Like they don't want their Pokemon in any other game, especially games like Power World, where it's essentially the same fucking game as Pokemon, but it's better because it's made for adults. Okay. That's a whole separate video.
Negative impact. And I don't know about you, but I don't think anyone really expects Wizards of the Coast to, well, make any sort of game that is like this mod. But of course, it
No.
generated headlines, especially after Sven, of course, founder of Larian, flagged it on social media.
Swin says fan mods shouldn't be treated like commercial ventures that infringe on your property just hours before Wizards of the Coast retracts its started mod takedown. Oh, they retracted it. Oh no shit. That's interesting.
Yeah, that all sparked something that we can very much predict. And to make it a little bit more official, Pokemon's former chief lawyer, so that's a powerful dude, told Aftermath, quote, "The worst thing on earth is when your fan project gets press. Because now I know about you." I like his vibes. That's threatening. That's kind of badass. Anyway, it
Fair.
seems then that some lawyers noticed IP infringement being highlighted, and they decided that they would go and earn their retainer fee, which they very much did. Now, were these lawyers working for Wizards of the Coast directly, or were they working for a third party? Were they justified? Thankfully, those questions are irrelevant because Wizards gave a statement to PC.
The Boulders Village DMCA takedown was issued mistakenly. We are sorry about that. We are in the process of fixing that now. So fans and the Stardew Valley community can continue to enjoy this great mod. So, first off, W Wizards for redacting their statements and their push for a DMCA. I do see two scenarios here. I really don't think it would be internal because internally, if they had a team of lawyers internally and they came across this, it would 100% be brought up uh, to executives and to people of importance to make these types of decisions. So, well, but saying that it was issued mistakenly tells me that they probably have a third party that looks into legal documents and legal issues when it comes to copyrights and IP and whatnot. And maybe they just don't like Stardew Valley, so they just decided, you know what, hey, I found a way in, and they decided to go after it. So at the end of the day, Wizards made the correct decision. Um, would I have blamed them if they still would have said no? You're not allowed to do that. No, I wouldn't have blamed them. I'm a very fucking consistent person, all right? Like if Wizards wanted to say, "Hey, you cannot use our IP in your game." Sure. Sure. And I also stand by the fact that, you know, if they kept everything on the Larian platform, then it would make sense because then they could continue getting a little bit of money for, you know, them continuing to grow in popularity through the modding scene. So both of those still apply, they still make sense. However, it seems like they have made the ultimate right decision in simply letting modders do what modders want to do, which is actually way better than frickin' Pokemon ever was. Because you can't do that with Nintendo at all. If you even come close to a Pikachu, you can see their lawyer call you tomorrow.
PC Gamer, here's the statement. The Baldur's Village DMCA takedown was issued mistakenly. We are sorry about that. We are in the process of fixing that now so fans and the Stardew community can continue to enjoy this great mod. Which does sound all pretty good, right? And it all illustrates, right, this tricky little position that
So another thing that they should have been doing is regulating the third party company and being a bit more strict with their rules and regulations that they want said lawyers to be looking out for and following. Because if they're just scramming around on the internet and they come up with some random shit that ends up causing a lot of problem and heartache for nothing like this. Well, not really like this. This wasn't that bad, but there definitely could be worse.
that the various stakeholders are in for these big games. Mods are a desirable part of the push for user generated content to extend game longevity. We've literally
Yeah,
seen that in Baldur's Gate 3, and it's not
and
just
Skyrim.
speculation, it is said by their publishing director. But it comes at the cost of giving up control over your product and risking your IP. And that is a culture shock to some. This culture shock is happening more and more. For some publishers and devs, giving up control is hard, and certain games simply
I think this will become easier when the older generation dies off. Like this would like I'm not trying to wish death upon anybody, obviously. I mean, come on now. But something to keep in mind is that the older generation, they don't understand any of this. like they were all in their 40s and 50s when the internet was first even being created. So you think they're going to understand why this free mod that makes a little bit of money for the modder completely separate from the mod itself is not trying to absolutely uproot the dynasty that they were trying to create? Yeah, they're not going to understand that. They just say, "Oh my god, this person is trying to steal my shit." Like that's the monkey brain coming to the forefront for them. Like, oh my god, is that? No, that's Groot? They're trying to steal Groot from us? No, shut it down. DMCA, call the lawyers. That's exactly what they think every time, without fail.
will not be able to accept it. And there can be very obvious business model reasons. Marvel Rivals banned modded skins as soon as Season 1 started in January. Obviously, they had to protect their entire cosmetic economy as well as their competitive
Well, yeah, that
integrity,
makes
right? So
sense.
you can see why they would do that. But on the other side of the spectrum, we've got, well, every time a new multiplayer game like, say, Repo or Lethal Company launches, it's almost no time until we get the mods that do end up increasing player counts, modifying models, doing all of those things. Like that crazy thing.
I think this is very dependent on what the business strategy for the game is, right? Because like we have the for a perfect example, the Oblivion remaster, brand new game out. Technically, uh, eventually, I mean, it's going to be just as modded as Skyrim, I'm sure, especially now because it has already been updated to the forefront. So now people can truly take this as an open canvas. And as supportive as Bethesda is, um, with the modding stuff, I mean, it's a no brainer to me that eventually Oblivion is going to be a part of the modding giants.
For Lethal Company that added in like a whole system
I still need Morrowind, by the way. I want a Morrowind remake.
where the voice chat of your teammates would basically be gobbled up by the mod, and yeah, the like spooky creatures would be talking with the voices of your friends. Insane and amazing value for the game. And what this has led to is a tension. On the one hand, we do have indie devs who broadly do love this shit, and AAAs who are not always great. One example of that's Take
True.
Two. They are famous for their absurd takedowns of anything related to Grand Theft Auto modding. Like, insanely so. And that's in spite of those mods giving birth to the GTA roleplay scene, which has been a massive line of business for them. But in some recent years, while they're still targeting some mods, even Take Two have actually relented a little bit. So here's an interesting thing. They have bought some of the 5M team, those are some of the people behind some of the bigger mods. They're officially helping to port mods to the new Definitive Edition. Elsewhere, then, Saber Interactive banned mods for Space Marine 2 public servers, but at the very same time, they then announced plans to release modding tools so that people could use them in private games. And
Well, that makes sense. Yeah.
then there's Naughty Dog. I don't think people would have expected.
Because the problem with like the line between modders and hackers is thin. so thin. So protecting your public servers makes sense to me. It makes absolute sense.
To this, but they've actually been really zen about mods for their PC ports. Game Informer presented the game director Matthew Gallant with the idea of someone replacing Ellie's model with Shrek in The Last of Us Part 2 remaster in PC, and he basically just said, once the game's out, well, they just have to accept that people will do what they want. That's pretty zen. I like that. It's
Facts.
absolutely a good thing that Baldur's Village went that way. However, that's not really the end of this video. In a way, it's not even the true story of this video. The true story of this video has actually got a lot to do with Baldur's Gate 3, where mods are official. On PC, you can of course download Baldur's Gate mods from places like Nexus and just go and run them, but those are not the official mods. The official mods are the ones that exist in the self-contained Baldur's Gate 3 modding platform. And it is not a small platform. To give you some numbers, the top mod has got 4 million downloads, and it's the only way that mods can of course play.
Well, I think a lot of that is console players too, because console players they don't have access to Nexus. But the problem with running modded games on console is that you have to deal with console regulations, whereas like PC is fairly open. Like you can do a lot on PC that you will never get to do on Xbox or PlayStation because of the different rules and regulations that you have to do and abide by uh, on their platforms.
Proliferate over to the console version of that game, which, hey, is incredible. Console players can get mods. Sick. I really like that. But those mods are themselves moderated and they do have content restrictions. And some of
Yep.
that is understandable. They probably
Yep.
don't want libelous content. They probably don't want things that violate the age rating, shall we say. But to take a kind of mimetic example, no third-party IP means that you cannot put Thomas the Tank Engine in Baldur's Gate. And it's not just Baldur's Gate. In recent years, we've seen this happen for City Skylines 2 and almost every modern Bethesda game. I mean, the latter's even got a store for mods. So these companies are building a system that allows for easy mod building, easy searching, easy access, minimal installation issues, not as much faffing around with load orders and all that fun from back in the day, but they are closed ecosystems with limits on what is allowed and hosted. And players, I'm noticing, are often outraged by this centralization of mods. Outraged. But not because it represents a threat to the free principles of modding culture. No, because it's centralized in the wrong place. That's where it gets interesting. The Paradox modding platform is not bad because it's under Paradox's thumb. It's bad because Steam Workshop support is what people want, and Steam Workshop is modding for a huge number of players. And here's where we get to a central tension. The moderation, the rules, the third-party IP things, those, well, they're not really supposed to be there in the Steam Workshop, right? Many of those same rules exist for Steam Workshop, but they're basically not enforced, or at least they're nowhere near as enforced as they are on those centralized per-game modding platforms. So, this is where it's interesting. It's a great thing that people can access mods.
People use Steam Workshop. Like I've been sitting here since he brought it up, thinking of any time in my life where I even downloaded that. If that is what I'm thinking of, I don't know if that's what I'm thinking of. Wait, what is a Steam Workshop? I'm gonna double check myself before I look like a retard. Yeah, that's what I thought. Really? I'm surprised. Huh. All right.
Especially in consoles. But we need to remember why these modding platforms are being made. It all goes back to the tension this video started with. Companies want player-created content for their games. They are happy to support that content because what it basically means is their games last longer. They last longer, they're played by more people, so whenever they have a DLC or cosmetics, there are more people around to actually buy them. That's obviously good for the companies, they're happy to support that, but there are limits in what those companies will permit. Wizards have relented on Baldur's Valley, which is good, but it does open the door, them doing that, for people to put characters, right, fan favorite characters, on any mod going forward, because they can see that Wizards made this call. And so for Wizards, they may have dodged a short-term thing here, but they also might have set a precedent that will lead to people putting their characters into mods in a way that they do not like, meaning they would probably have to clamp down on that, which would then piss everybody off again. But here's the rub. That's only a problem if it happens on the Nexus, or it happens on some forum. If you are inside their closed modding ecosystem, well, they will be thrilled to have you there. Their problem is that the ultimate solution would be to remove open source modding, and there are likely ways they can do that, but they probably know that's not a feasible thing, and it would certainly make them look like absolute unhinged villains. So what they're going to do, and what they are doing, is basically the Valve approach. And that is to give people an easy, simple solution that is convenient. Because Steam has got loads of DRM, loads of things that if they crop up on Epic or any other storefront, people are absolutely goddamn irate. And this might be weird, it might sound weird to some people who have only grown up knowing Steam. I was playing PC games before Steam existed. I mean, yeah, I was very young, but I remember people being angry at Steam. They were angry with Half-Life 2 and Steam, okay? But what happened with Steam is it ended up being such a good service that people accepted those downsides. We're going to see that happen more and more with mods. The overt plan, if you're one of these companies, is to build out your own little fiefdom of user-generated content, which is absolutely amazing because you just conscript legions of people who are throwing their passion into it. It all goes into your closed little garden that will go across all your different platforms. You will juice up your player numbers. That will be really good for you. So it's worth us kind of remembering exactly who ultimately benefits from this shift in how modding works, from being completely open to happening on strange little fiefdoms that exist within games. If I was to place bets, I would say there will be a lot of drama from this tension moving into the future, and at least one way in which there will be drama is this is going to have to come back to monetization. Bethesda are already doing that. Minecraft, as an example, is already doing that. Why is it not being done for City Skylines, for Baldur's Gate, for any of the countless games?
It's because they don't want to spend the money on it. Bethesda was willing to reward m- talented modders. For example, like a Eleonora, who started off as making home mods, but she would make them to such high quality that eventually Bethesda's like, yo, she gets like millions of people to download her mods because of how good they are. Let's pay her, and then we'll have content for our Creation Club store. And it worked. A lot of people bought it. But there's not really much else to say. I mean, this video was definitely interesting. Um, how do I feel about mods? I feel like, or mod stores, I should say. I think mod stores are fine. Um, so long as the split is fair to the people who are actually putting their passion into the game, I think that's fine. But can I see a world where it's more fruitful than a Nexus? No, I don't. I do think eventually the regulation and restriction will what's the best, not funnel, but it'll kind of create I don't know what the best way to say it is. I do think it'll eventually create an issue where uh the whole point of mods being open source is that you can recreate a world to feel like you're experiencing that same world for the first time all over again. And if that means that you're running around and the thing that is chasing you down is Thomas the Dank Engine, or you swap out Alduin's face for Snoop Dogg, or like what I did back in the day was I ran around on the back of Godzilla capturing people with Pokeballs, and my weapon was a lightsaber. That insane gameplay would have never been possible if it was on a regulated kind of private store, which is eventually what they're all going to be, is just it'll be a private condensed store of which they will only allow or disallow certain things, and it'll all end up feeling the same. But that's I don't see a world where that is beneficial for either the company or the people making the mods. If anything, I'll feel like that would kill the culture more than anything else, and then it would no longer be lucrative at all. So then both companies and player will have wasted their time. I do think they require each other to be at opposites to coexist, if that makes sense. But that's going to be it for this video. So make sure you guys go to Bellular News and give him a like, give him a sub on his video. Absolutely fantastic videos every time I watch. Uh, and make sure you like and subscribe here. We're still trying to grow. So I'll catch you guys in the next video. Later.